listener production.
Hey, Tara Cassidy with you and welcome to The Briefing. Creating and sharing nudes, revenge and deepfake porn has become increasingly common in Australia. Just last week, politician Mark Latham's ex was charged with distributing intimate images, while last month, a man who made deepfake pornographic images of prominent Australian women was charged and fined over $340,000. And as new technologies evolve, it's a type of crime that authorities, schools and social media sites are struggling to stamp out.
It is an adapting crime. New types of image-based sexual abuse are emerging. Police are taking action against people who are from a range of age groups and are perpetrating different types.
That chat, looking at the worst offenders of image-based sexual abuse, is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Chris Spiru. It's Thursday the 16th of October.
Hey Tara, and to you listening. There's fresh concerns over whether Trump's Gaza peace deal will succeed after one of the 4 latest bodies released by Hamas wasn't that of any hostages, according to the Israeli Defense Force. It's still waiting for 21 of 28 bodies to be returned, angering Israel and the families of hostages, with Hamas saying the process of finding their remains will be difficult due to the destruction in Gaza. And look, according to the BBC, the agreement did also appear to state that Hamas may not have been able to find all of the remains before the deadline given by Israel, which was 72 hours.
Yeah, and look, the bodies that have been handed over to date were basically transported to the National Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv for testing so they can be formally identified. And this isn't the first time that Hamas has released incorrect remains to Israel, who have since accused the group of violating the ceasefire agreement and have restricted humanitarian trucks flowing into the strip in response. However, it has agreed to reopen the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza to allow 600 to go in. Now, the apparent fragility of this deal has left many Palestinians in Gaza concerned for their safety, and they've reportedly been stockpiling food as they're not convinced that it's going to be a success.
Yeah, and there's expected to be tension over other parts of the deal soon as well, including the point which states Hamas must be disarmed, something the group said it won't do unless a Palestinian state is created, to which Trump said if they don't, they'll be forced, in his words, quickly and perhaps violently.
If they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games.
Meanwhile, there's also been more killings in the region, with Hamas attempting to reassert its dominance and recently filmed carrying out public executions of 8 Gazans in graphic footage now circulating online.
Now, the video shows several men being made to kneel down in the middle of a crowd before what you just heard is them being executed, with a Hamas-affiliated Telegram account saying they were, quote, collaborators and lawbreakers. President Donald Trump, who is now back in the US after his Middle East tour, has commented on the killings, saying, quote, it didn't bother me much as they were members of a rival gang.
Staying overseas and to Indonesia, where 3 Australians accused of being involved in the killing of a Melbourne man in a luxury Bali villa earlier this year could be facing the death penalty. Prosecutors say the trio, dubbed the Bali Three, will be indicted on murder charges over the suspected underworld hit that killed 32-year-old Zavan Redmanovic in June while he was staying in a villa north of Canggu with his wife and another couple.
Yeah, and police who finalised their months-long investigation yesterday allege 2 Australian men stormed the villa where they gunned him down and also shot 34-year-old underworld figure Sanar Ghanim, who survived the attack. Now, Radmanovic's wife was telling them that she woke up to her husband's screams and she then hid under a blanket while gunfire rang out.
In the days after the attack, the 3 Australian men were detained by police and paraded before the media wearing hoods. They have since been handed over to prosecutors who will allege 27-year-old Payai Midamore Tupou and 22-year-old Mevlat Koskun carried out the attack, while 27-year-old Darcy Jensen is accused of helping them prepare for it by providing them with a sledgehammer to break into the villa, as well as getaway bikes. The trio are now expected to be charged with premeditated murder, which carries the death penalty by firing squad when they face court next month.
The world's carbon dioxide levels have reached record highs, putting us on track for warmer temperatures, more extreme weather and rising sea levels. The report by the World Meteorological Organization states the huge rise in emissions is likely a result of widespread wildfires fueled by El Niño conditions, which is basically hotter, drier and greater fire risk. Now, according to the WMO, our greenhouse gases have tripled since the 60s due to similar circumstances, also coupled with our our own human activities, which has created what they're calling a vicious climate cycle.
Yeah, it also looked at things like methane and nitrous oxide, which are greenhouse gases that come from things we do as humans, and those have also hit record highs. The WMO says in terms of CO2, though, it's not just the overall historic figures we need to worry about. Last year itself saw the biggest rise in CO2 concentration in the atmosphere since we started taking the measurements back in 1957. And basically what happens is heat gets trapped by CO2 and other greenhouse emissions, which then leads to the warmer, more extreme weathers like wildfires and the vicious cycle we were just talking about.
Rising CO2 levels can have really devastating flow-on effects for the environment and also our way of life. So think things like, people who live in hot areas expect hotter, and those living near the coastline, water approaching homes. And there was actually another impact that we're seeing in Australia already, and it's to do with our rainforests, Chris. This separate study that's just been released that shows that our rainforests are now releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than they absorb, which is something they haven't seen anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and the finding was reported in Nature, which is a reputable scientific journal, and it looked at the trees in our wet tropics, so think places like Cairns in North Queensland. And the lead author of the study pretty much said we rely on tropical forests like these more than people realise because they help absorb some of the damage we do with things like burning fossil fuels. But now that that's under threat, thanks to heat stress and drought preventing new trees from growing, we're seeing that vicious cycle over and over again.
NRL players who join rival competitions not recognised by the code will now face a 10-year ban. The announcement was made yesterday, and it comes amid reports that several high-profile players are being approached or are in talks already with a new rugby union competition called R360 or the Rebel Leagues. Now, the decade-long ban, which also applies to agents, comes as other governing bodies, including several other rugby union federations, are basically pushing back against the breakaway competition and banning their players from test matches or signing on.
Yeah, and as to what we know about this new comp R360, well, it's co-founded by former England Rugby World Cup winner Mike Tindall. It hasn't announced a launch date yet, but it is hoping to establish 8 men's teams and 4 women's teams who will compete in a Grand Prix style format with games played across the globe, including in London, Miami, Tokyo and Dubai. And as for what they're offering, there are reports of contracts of more than $2 million a season being offered to Premiership-winning Broncos star Payne Haas, as well as other lucrative offers to Parramatta Eels star Zach Lomax and Melbourne Storms player Ryan Pappenhausen.
Yeah, and meanwhile, NRL boss Peter V'landys reckons that this comp has come out of a, quote, cornflakes box, Chris, and basically just that the body doesn't recognise it.
It's a complete unprofessional. They've got no business plan. Any player that goes is really risking their career. So, look, as I said, it's a competition out of a cornflakes box. I'm not going to be concerned about it.
I mean, for someone not very concerned about it, they sound very concerned about it because my question is then, why do they care?
Yeah.
And why are they cracking down so heavily if they're not worried? Because it comes across like they are threatened. And personally, I think players should be free to make those decisions themselves. But anyway, that is just me. Now, meantime, R360 CEO has dropped a statement saying they anticipated this pushback and added basically history has shown that when athletes are offered choice and opportunities, threats then follow, and that their comp is about empowering players, giving rugby lovers and next-gen fans new platforms to enjoy the sport they love.
Yeah, and I mean, look, theoretically, I'm all for competition. I love healthy competition, but I actually feel a little bit bad here for the diehard footy fans because if they want to get around this because some of their, favourite players might be involved, I wonder how much it's going to cost them because I can't see something like this ending up on free-to-air or, being put on Stan Sport, which is owned by Channel 9, who have really strong deals with the NRL. So I'm very curious to see where this will be streamed and how much it'll cost rugby fans to actually watch it.
Who let the dogs out? Virgin did. That's right, Chris. Pack your bags and your pets. The day has come, everyone, at last. You can now officially take your beloved pooches on that holiday you've been dreaming up as Virgin Australia's Pet on Flights trial is underway. Our furry friends can now fly from Melbourne to or from the Gold and Sunshine Coasts in Queensland. But sadly, it's only our very small mates for now, though some customers are already calling for big dogs to be allowed on planes.
Yeah, but the airline says, who knows, maybe in the future it is using this as a test to check that it all goes to plan. And if it does, it'll get expanded across the country to the rest of its domestic flights next year. And the first pet-friendly flight is actually taking off today, Tara, with the trial running through until January. Now, look, I know there are calls for bigger dogs to be involved in this. As an owner of a bigger dog, I do not endorse this message.
I don't even endorse my crazy Frenchies that are like the size of a brick going on. So anyway, I'm interested to see how this goes, particularly around Christmas time when the airport's already very chaotic, but add some barks and hair to that mix. But anyway, now that brings our headlines to a close for today. Coming up next is my deep dive, looking into who the worst perpetrators are for revenge porn, deep fakes and other types of image-based sexual abuse. Have a listen to that up next. There's been a rise in the number of people carrying out image-based sexual abuse in Australia. Everything from deepfake and revenge porn to taking and sharing photos and videos without consent. And now, new research from the Australian Institute of Criminology has shed light on the people committing these types of crimes. Here to discuss what it found is AIC Research Manager Tom Sullivan. Tom, thanks so much for joining me on the briefing today. First and foremost, what was the purpose of this study and what did it look at?
The purpose of the research was to better understand the types of image-based sexual abuse that the police were proceeding against in Australia. And we wanted to find out the extent to which the police were proceeding against this type of crime and the different types of crimes, and also learn a bit more about the alleged offenders of this type of crime, which we see increasing in Australia according to surveys of the population.
And what exactly does constitute image-based sexual abuse? Can you unpack that a bit for me?
Image-based sexual abuse is the threatened or actual taking or sharing of a nude or a sexual image, and that might be a photo or a video of another person without their consent. So the capturing of a sexual image might include examples such as upskirting, taking photographs of strangers without their consent, but it also includes sexual extortion, and it may include cases of revenge-motivated pornography, as well as image-based abuse that's motivated by other reasons as well. Our research shows that police are taking action against people who are from a range of age groups and are perpetrating different types of image-based sexual abuse against victim survivors who are known to them and less commonly who are not known to them. And so the crime is not only about revenge-motivated abuse, it's about a range of different types of motivations and different types of abuse. And this has implications for the policy related to this type of abuse and the prevention of it.
And so what did you find out while carrying out this research?
We found that alleged image-based sexual abuse offenders were mostly men. They were commonly aged in their mid-20s to early 30s, and they tended to perpetrate image-based abuse against females. And that was based on our analysis of multi-jurisdictional data, recent data on people who had been proceeded against by the police for image-based sexual abuse in 2022-23.
And you talked before about the different kinds. Did you get any information around the breakup of like what the most common type of image-based sexual abuse is down to the least?
We found that the largest number of alleged offenders had distributed or shared intimate images of another person, and that was commonly a current or former intimate partner of that person. Other people had allegedly captured or taken an intimate image of someone without their consent, and these people were equally as likely to have taken the image of a non-family member, an intimate partner, or a stranger. And then the third and final group of alleged offenders had threatened to capture or distribute intimate images, and this was again typically of their current or former intimate partner.
And you said mid-20s to early 30s males earlier. I did also see in the graph on this report that the second largest demographic of offenders was actually men 45 years and over, which I thought was interesting, then 35 to 44, which would suggest that this isn't just a young person kind of immaturity problem. This spans across ages.
Absolutely, yeah. We found that the alleged offenders of this type of abuse were from a range of different age groups. from children right up to those older males aged 45 and over. And we found that it also occurred across different types of relationship as well, including the sort of intimate partner, a current or former intimate partner, as well as less commonly against strangers as well.
In terms of those demographics, age groups, what was the difference in terms of who their most likely victim was, depending on how old they were?
We found that males tended to perpetrate image-based abuse against females. When we looked closer at the small number of female offenders, as I said, most offenders were males, but there were a small number of female offenders, and we found that females tended to offend against other females.
Interesting. And what about within, you were saying that obviously men seem to do this a lot more. Was there a difference between, say, what a 16-year-old would do as opposed to the over 35, over 45 age group?
We did find that the younger age groups were more likely to have been proceeded against for distributing or sharing or sending intimate images as compared to other types of image-based sexual abuse. But we found that that type of offence was common across all age groups. However, we did find that when we looked more closely at people who'd been proceeded against for taking an intimate image, for that capture offence, that they tended to be older.
And I think I read something about that the younger demographics are more likely to do this to, say, someone they know, not a family member, but someone they know. Perhaps I'm thinking it might be a colleague or a school student they go to school with, whereas the older demographics are more likely to offend against their own partner. Was that right?
That's correct, yeah. So we found that the younger age group were often proceeded against for an offence involving a non-family member who were still known to them. And there has been sort of earlier evidence in other research that this type of offending might involve harassment or bullying in cases that involve younger people.
And did we gain any insight into what's causing these types of crimes? Like what's leading to it and why it's predominantly committed by young males?
There has been earlier research on motivations that has found that the perpetrators of domestic violence may use intimate image abuse to attempt to coercively control their intimate partner. Images have also been used to threaten victims of sexual and domestic violence, to prevent them seeking help and reporting to the police. As I mentioned earlier, it can be used in sextortion and voyeurism when the offender may be perpetrating an offence against a stranger as well.
And do you think that there needs to be more education in this space, like whether it be in schools or universities? Like I think back to when I was in school and we certainly didn't have talks from anyone, whether it be teachers or police coming in to tell us about, hey, this is actually a crime, an offence that police do chase people up about. Has that changed? And do you think that that's the kind of conversations we need to be having at a young age, or what's the answer?
Yeah, our report has suggested that education is key to better understanding the laws and support available. For example, victim survivors of this type of abuse are able to report image-based sexual abuse to the e-Safety Commissioner to seek to have their images removed. Education is also important to inform potential offenders as well, so they can better understand the harms and other implications of offending. And we've also suggested there's a need to raise awareness for bystanders, for people who may witness this type of offending, so they can effectively intervene and give support as well.
And did you guys look at all, I know that in recent years there's been more, new kinds of image-based sexual abuse, including, things like AI now. Is that a concern that we're trying to stamp out this behaviour and then suddenly we're seeing kind of new kinds of it pop up?
Absolutely. It is an adapting crime. New types of image-based sexual abuse are emerging. As you mentioned, like deepfakes are one such emerging form of this crime. And so again, education really is key to help people to understand those emerging forms and to offer support when necessary, or to seek assistance where they think they might have been victimised.
Tom, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining me on The Briefing.
Great. Thank you very much.
That was Australian Institute of Criminology's Tom Sullivan speaking with me there. And that's it for this episode of The Briefing. If you found this ep interesting, don't forget to leave us a comment or a review, or you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Tara Cassidy. See you next time.